I just decided to do something I hardly ever do. I'm going to tell a story about one of my kids. And I didn't ask his permission, so, I'm kind of hoping he doesn't see the video. So when our youngest, Joel, was in primary school, I think this happened maybe around grade 2 or 3, maybe a little older, I'm not sure. Joel's a sweet kid, and he's not one of he would never be like a schoolyard bully. He would never push back, fight back, and he's always kind, and it still is just a very sweet young man. And there was a kid in his class who wasn't kind or sweet and wasn't nice to anybody. And school was understaffed and too many kids in the class. And one day, at an indoor lunch, Joel was sitting, minding his own business, and this other little buddy came over and shoved him and knocked him in his chair over and hit the back of his head. And we had to go in because, they wanted to see whether they had to call an ambulance for Joel. And I found out that this kid had been doing that a lot to Joel and to other people, and there was no recourse. When I went in to talk to the vice principal, ready to punch somebody myself, ready to knock somebody over myself, the vice principal got a file out. It was a great big paper file with a big elastic band around it, clunked it down on our desk and said, "Sure, you can write an incident report. We'll file one, but we'll just add it to the pile. We literally don't know what to do with this kid." Well, I knew what I wanted to do with this kid. And I wanted to phone the police because my little boy had been assaulted. And the vice principal said, "Oh, no, please, you can do that if you want. But we would rather you didn't, because it's not going to make anything better, because this little boy will have to go home. And you have no idea what it's like for him at home." In other words, you have no idea, or you can get an idea of why this kid is the way he is. Because that's how it is. I wanted to kill that kid. I wanted at least to knock him over, knock him out of his chair and say, "See, that's what it's like." But you know what? That's probably what was going to happen to him when he got home. Ever been bullied? Ever had somebody in your life where you just wanted to knock them off their chair? Kick the crap out of them? Or see it done if you weren't up to it yourself? So was Jesus serious? Are we really supposed to love our enemies? What the heck? Maybe especially on Remembrance Day. Jesus' words, love your enemies. I don't know, to me that sounds really, really hard. But maybe especially on Remembrance Day, we should try a little harder to let that idea sink in. Try to take it seriously. Perhaps on this day of sad and dark remembering, we need a little light. God's light to shine on the subject. Love our enemies. Well, what would have to change in me in order to love people who I feel have wronged me, hurt me, or who have posed a threat to those I love? Lots of things would have to change in me. I'd have to give some stuff up. I'd have to give up being judge, jury, and executioner in the court of my imagination. I'd have to give up the idea that revenge, hurting someone because they've hurt me, or even just ticked me off, I'd have to give up the idea that that has ever led to anything good. Really, Jesus, is that what you want? Love our enemies? Maybe Jane misread that. Maybe there's a loophole. Maybe there's a way around that. But that's what we just heard her read it. Jesus said, I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the supple moves of prayer. For then you are working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. That's what God does. God gives God's best, to the sun to warm and the rain to nourish, to everyone, regardless, the good and the bad, the nice and the nasty. Jesus said, if all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? You want a medal? Anyone can do that. If you simply say hello to those who greet you, do you expect to be rewarded? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. In a word, what I'm saying is grow up. You're kingdom subjects. Now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously toward others the way God lives toward you. So I guess there's no loopholes, huh? That's supposed to be the deal. We're supposed to grow up, get over it, and be loving. Even when, and probably especially when, we don't feel like it. There's a man in his 40s. His name is Joshua Cox. He lives in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, even though apartheid officially ended in South Africa in 1991, it's still a country divided. Black people, colored people, white people still mostly live in separate realities. And unemployment, poverty, and ghastly living conditions and isolation are still a daily reality for the majority of the population. So Joshua said, when apartheid ended, things didn't suddenly all fall into place and black people were suddenly offered these amazing opportunities and their lives got better. People are still struggling under the legacy of systems that apartheid created. And he said, I think by and large, white people have very little understanding of what their experience is in life. So Joshua, who's a white guy, by the way, he wanted to do something about it. He started a social enterprise, a little non-for-profit business he calls Fix Forward, that helps black laborers secure employment, doing home repairs and renovations for well-off white South Africans in their neighborhoods. He connects the homeowners, who are mostly white, who live in the more affluent areas, and also the owners of businesses who want renovations done or need maintenance done on their properties. He connects them with tradesmen, laborers, mostly black or colored, who still live for the most part in the shanty towns, the settlements that are all around Cape Town, but it's a different reality. He builds bridges between these laborers who need work and potential employers, many of whom are still afraid of black people. Don't know any personally, except the ones who maybe cut their lawn or make their bed, fix their house. That's the way they were brought up. They were brought up to be afraid and suspicious. And they may expect the work of these black laborers to be left undone, not completed, done shabbily. But Fix Forward, this little agency, provides a safety net, and they guarantee that if the employer isn't happy with the work, they'll come back and fix it. Although Joshua says that mostly doesn't happen because they do good work. And this agency, Fix Forward, isn't just an employment agency. They provide training programs in the low-income, high-unemployment areas so more people can develop skills they need to have a trade, to be employed, to begin to change their lives. They now have more than 100 skilled tradespeople working in Cape Town. They're planning to expand to Johannesburg, and Joshua is also looking, and this is pretty cool, looking to bring the same model to Austria to work with Syrian refugees. Because in Austria, they're having the same kind of difficulty, them and us. And how do you find a way for people to constructively be together? Maybe they work together. Maybe they train some of the refugees to do things that will help the people who've lived in Austria their whole lives. Maybe that can relieve some of the tension, some of the fear and suspicion. So this guy, Joshua, he's helping to change lives, one or two at a time. One person gets a trade, goes to work for another person. These two people are now changed by the possibility of a relationship. Maybe it becomes possible for these two humans to see each other in new ways. Jesus said, I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the supple moves of prayer. For then you're working out of your true selves, your God-created selves. That's what God does. There's another guy. His name's Greg Boyle. He was born and raised in Los Angeles. He grew up to be a Jesuit priest. And his first assignment as a priest, he was sent to be the pastor in a parish in Boyle Heights, which at the time was the epicenter of gang violence during the worst years of gang wars in the late 1980s and into the 1990s. By 1988, Father Greg was just fed up with doing funerals for kids who were killed by gang violence. He was done with it. Couldn't stand it. He had every reason to be angry, every reason to lash out against those gangs and what they were doing to people. So Father Boyle and some parish and community leaders worked together to start something called Jobs for a Future. Father Boyle says, gang violence is about a lethal absence of hope. No one's ever met a hopeful kid who joined a gang. And he said, if we're going to work with these young people, we're going to treat the gang members as human beings. And in their first go-around, they helped 70 former gang members get jobs and start new lives. It's going along great. Then 1992, race riots in Los Angeles. Rodney King. City blows up. Jobs for a Future. This tiny little agency needs to get bigger. So with the help of a Hollywood producer, they bought an abandoned building. It used to be a bakery. They returned it to its former business. They called it the Homeboy Bakery. And it's become the base of operations for Homeboy Industries, an independent nonprofit corporation. Every year, more than 15,000 clients go through their doors. 120,000 people have been helped in one way or another in gang intervention. People who walk in are welcomed into a community where they're respected, where they're loved. And they're offered a wide variety of services, everything from anger management, money management, parenting classes, and tattoo removal, and job training. And every year, more than 200 men and women get a full-time job working for Homeboy. And they have an 18-month program. It's an apprenticeship where they have a job, and they also have to go to classes and group therapy to re-identify who they are in the world, learn a trade, become a contributing member of their own family, of the community, finding out they count, they can make a difference. One of Father Greg's slogans is, nothing stops bullets like a job. Homeboy Industries has worked hard to offer an alternative to this endless cycle of the criminal justice system. They ask a really simple question. What if we were to invest in this population rather than just keep putting them in jail? But wait a minute. These are gang members. These are drug dealers. These are murderers. These are thugs. These are bullies. Why would you ever want to help them? That sounds a lot like, what did Jesus say we had to do? What was that? Love our enemies? Oh my gosh. Father Greg also says things like, he says this to former gang members. You are so much more than the worst thing you ever did. You are so much more than the worst thing you ever did. You are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. And because he gets a lot of attention, he's kind of a hero himself for what he does, he has to keep saying to people over and over again, I don't save people. God saves people. What I hear him saying is this work of loving our enemies, it's really hard. Can't do it by ourselves. And we're actually not meant to do it by ourselves. We need God's help. The good news in this story is that God is ready, able, and willing to help us learn how to love each other, even those we might see as our enemies. Today, when we're gathered to count, to remember the costs of war, it's so important for us to remember that God is offering us a light, and God is calling us to live another way. Thanks be to God. Amen.